It's now recording.
Hello, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the fifth session of our interview series on the edited volume, International Studies in the Philippines, Mapping New Frontiers in Theory and Practice, published by Routledge. Today, we are interviewing Dr. Florencia Rubiolo, economic perspective on diversification in Philippine-South America relations. Dr. Rubiolo is an associate researcher at the National Scientific and Technical Research Council, Argentina. She holds a PhD in International Relations and is the director of the PhD program in International Relations and professor of International Relations History at Cordoba Catholic University. Her research interests include Southeast Asian international politics, South America-East Asia relations, South-South relations, foreign policy analysis, and economic diplomacy. Her current project at CONICET and UCC is Asia Pacific and Latin America conditions, strategies, and actions of economic diplomacy and foreign policy. The interview will be myself, Francis Cruz, and Dr. Nasifa Diong, both from the University of Philippines, Diliman, and editors of the book. Hello, Florencia, and we hope you're doing well.
Hello, Francis and Nasef. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk to you. Been so long.
Yes, it has been a long time.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, dear Florencia, and also thank you for accepting our invitation. Our first question to you is, what factors, events, or experiences that have had influenced and shaped your thinking about the world?
Well, being in a South American country and experiencing development realities all around and in many ways, I think my readings during my PhD about development and foreign policies and the relations between these two, particularly from less developed countries, were the readings and the elements that shaped my thinking about the world the most. How development is a central axis for Latin American foreign policies and how it has been like that for decades. And also how these countries have strived to achieve it while at the same time maintaining a certain degree of political autonomy from international powers are not only elements influencing my views, but these topics have usually been a regular topic of my writings.
All right, Florencia, thanks for that. With those influences in mind, how did they contribute in the writing of your chapter? And explain to us the thesis and main arguments of your article.
Well, besides the title, which is very straightforward to these topics, I think I depart from the idea that South American relations with Southeast Asia in general have traditionally been driven by economic interests which relate to these countries' development needs, South American countries. Southeast Asian countries emerged as South American more strategic partners since the early 2000s as a move to diversify external relations, to better integrate to a changing economic environment, and to contribute to national development through different international strategies. My chapter focuses on these political and economic relations, particularly between three Latin American countries, Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, and the Philippines in Southeast Asia. The main argument is that these countries' foreign policies towards the Philippines have been mainly influenced by their respective economic models, as well as with other Southeast Asian countries. But in the case of the Philippines, these economic elements have been more influential over other elements, such as the common Spanish heritage we share between Latin America and the Philippines, and also the relatively strong cultural proximity. These two elements have not been so influential in these relations, even though we could think they would.
Okay, thank you, Florencia. You explained to us the main substance of your chapter. How will that contribute to the general knowledge of international studies in the Philippines?
Well, I will give you my view on this, but I believe there might be more contributions which we could also discuss with Philippine specialists like you and Francis, which are more informed about the Philippines development on IR studies. But I believe that Latin American studies in the Philippines, particularly the economic and political relations between them, have not captured much attention from the academic circle, ever. So in this context, and also Latin American situation regarding Philippine studies is quite similar to this. There are not many writings on these bilateral relations in the economic and political dimensions. So I believe this chapter can contribute as a starting point to stimulate a deeper interest in this topic, as well as a reference on regional studies between the Philippines and Latin America, moving beyond the cultural aspect. And the second contribution is regarding the theoretical approach, which is centered on international political economy, which, as I have seen during the writing of the chapter, has not been strongly developed in the Philippines IR studies.
Right. Thank you, Florencia, for your answers. I think that when we consider your chapter, which is about relations between the Philippines and Latin America, could you perhaps give some advice, or maybe you'd have a wish for IS students in the Philippines or novice scholars regarding research interests in international studies or international relations? I know you touched on it a bit earlier, but maybe you have some kind of desire for further research and studies in the Philippines.
Well, yes, maybe not particularly for the Philippines in terms of the topic. And in general terms, as an international studies researcher, which is the main focus of my professional career, I would have some pieces of advice related to the professional development. Regarding any topic they would choose, I would first say that you should always try to follow your own curiosity, I would say it, which is the engine of any research, regardless of the topic. Second, I would also say to always focus your research topics on something you are really passionate on, because you are going to live with it for many, many years. And it will make it easier and more fun, and probably, and more importantly, more productive. But regarding the topic, I believe that for global South countries in general, or we could say less developed countries, development is the most central concern. And these countries include not only Latin America, but also, of course, Southeast Asia, and particularly the Philippines. I believe all our researchers and research in some way should contribute to understand this reality, this particular reality and context in which we act and develop in the international arena. And our research should also aim at becoming input to a more comprehensive and informed foreign policy decision-making process, which is usually neglected as an objective or goal of our research work.
Yes, I think that that's great advice for those who want into the IR, right, rather than just the academic side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Along those lines, perhaps we can talk about IS in the context of the Global South, particularly in Southeast Asia and the Philippines, or in terms of the relations of Southeast Asia and other parts of the world, as you mentioned, how can that move forward and advance and have a conversation with dominant trends in particularly Western or global North IR?
Well, it's a very compelling and very contemporary debate, I believe, we are having in different latitudes of the world. And probably, well, I don't have a straightforward answer for this, but probably the axis of that dialogue, I believe, should take into account the divergent historical and development path of these two, how to say it, different spaces, the different discourses about history, both from the Global South and from a more Western-centric perspective, and the different interests reflected today in each side of IR perspectives. Yes, so there are different levels, like the path, the discourses, and the interest of these two big spaces or arenas. And also I believe that, which is also a great debate, if complementarity of or competition between these two. I believe complementarity rather than competition has to be the way to move forward a more constructive conversation in order to finally consolidate Global South voices as an essential pillar of international relations studies.
We'd like to thank Dr. Rubiolo for sharing her thoughts with us today. Thanks so much for coming to this interview. In spite of the typhoon here and the time difference, we managed to make it. And we look forward to having our book launch soon with you. We hope you'll be able to join that too.
Will that be online, virtual?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep,
Oh, great. Yes,
COVID.
I'll be there then.
Thanks, Florencia.
Yes. Thank you.